Welcome to this lesson on the Tableau Certified Data Analyst exam content. We're going to be talking about creating dashboards and stories. And so in particular, we're going to talk about how to use containers and layout options to combine sheets in a dashboard. Then we're going to look at adding other objects, images, and text. And then we're also going to look at creating stories using story points. And so pro tip, if I'm going too slowly or too quickly, adjust the speed of the video. This is the documentation on adding objects to a dashboard, the documentation on layout for dashboards, and then documentation on stories. And I'll be including links to those documentations under the video. Now I'm going to switch over to Tableau for my demo. And I've already created a couple worksheets, but I haven't created my dashboard yet. And so I'm going to click this button to create my dashboard. This is the new worksheet button and this is the new dashboard button. So I'm going to create that. And then here I can see if I click on layout that I have no item hierarchy so far. It just says dashboard 1, but there's nothing underneath that. I'm going to change that by dragging monthly into the view. And so this is set up as tiled. And so it's going to snap to be the size of the whole view at first. And so now I've got my graph that's the size of the whole area here. And if I switch over to layout, you will see that underneath tiled, we've got a horizontal section. And so that this means basically we've got the section on the right and the section on the left. And so the left is the monthly view and the right is this filter. So if I want to remove that, I can right click here and say remove from dashboard, and then the filters will be taken out. So now I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to put the map on top. And so again, that added the filters. If I want to remove them, I could click here and just do X and get rid of them like that. And so now I've got these two, the map and the monthly, and I can make adjustments. For example, if I want to remove the title, I think I would go here and uncheck the title. I could go here and uncheck the title. I could do fit. This is a tiled view, and so these take up the whole space and they don't overlap with a tiled view. And this is where we've got, and if we go over to layout, you see these are tiled and one on top of the other, right? So that's how it's set up now. And if I instead do a floating and put something in here, it can go on top. So if I do an image or text, I'll do my floating text. Like this. And so this is floating, meaning it can go on top of other stuff and it can just kind of move around dynamically like that as I drag it around, right? Whereas if I do the same thing, but with a tiled, it's going to go either in the middle or to one side like this, or on top or all the way in the bottom. So this would be my tiled text. So that's tiled versus floating. The next thing I want to mention is that the size here. This size, it's a range size. There's 3 different options for the size. You can do range, you can do automatic, and you can do fixed. Fixed is useful if you want to be printing your dashboard. You're planning that the primary purpose is like printing or exporting an image. And so you want to know exactly what size you're going to get out. Then you might want to do a fixed size. Otherwise, automatic or range are going to be flexible for different screen sizes, right? So the automatic, the common is it will resize to fit any screen. And then range, you can set either a minimum or a maximum or both for the size of the dashboard. I also want to look at the layout options. I can add a border and I can adjust the padding. Here I've got a border set like this. And then I can adjust the padding. I can put more space, for example, on the bottom like this. Or if I unlock this, then I can adjust just the bottom by itself, right? If it's locked, they're all going to be the same. If I unlock, then I can make the padding on the bottom greater. And so this is just adding more space. The border is adding a line around the outside to kind of differentiate it more from the other things in the dashboard. And then we have this hierarchy at the bottom, which basically shows how the dashboard is laid out with different sections. Also want to point out that we can add containers to the dashboard. So I can add either horizontal or vertical containers. If I want to add a horizontal container here, this is basically just an empty area that I can adjust the size of this area and other things can go inside, right? So I can say, okay, I want an area this size, and then I can put various other things in here like, text, my text 1. We can switch if we don't want this to be a tiled container, we can switch it to a floating like this. And now it turned from being tiled to floating, and then we can turn it back. Same with this, we can turn it to floating. And so now this goes on top like this versus tiled where it, versus tiled where it's going to be to the left, right, or above or below. That is what I have to say about the layout, the borders, the padding. Now let's take a look at adding different objects to our dashboard. So the objects that we can add are over here on the left side. We can add, for example, images like this. Here I'm offered the chance to add a file, right? If I have a file or a link to a particular image, I can add that to my dashboard. We can also add a navigation button. That's an option down here. So I can put this here, and if I click edit, I can adjust the button so that it navigates over to monthly. And I'll put the name of for the title, I'm going to put it as monthly. And now go to monthly, put as the tooltip. And so now if I hold down Alt and I click this, it'll take me over to monthly. Another thing to point out is that we can choose to hide, selectively add an Add Show Hide button. And so now this can be hidden when it's not needed and then brought back up. If I do Alt click again on this X, it hides monthly and then it'll make monthly reappear. And so that can be handy if you have a big menu, but you don't want it to show up, basically a way to conserve real estate. So that's what I have to share about dashboards, adding objects. We didn't look at every single object type, but I think you kind of get the idea that you can add these in, and I covered the ones with more complex menus. And so now let's take a look at stories. A story is a way to potentially show multiple different views with associated insights. It's handy if you want to kind of highlight certain insights. I'm going to add monthly to start with. High point in June. And then June was high. I think this is June. No, November. November, but profit wasn't high. So we could have this as one of our insights. And then we can add, and this is what makes story points different, we can add a second copy of the same data. And so we can highlight something else here. And so I can add another annotation here to this point and say, this was lower. Put a comment there. And so what month was this? July was lower. And so this is particularly helpful if you want to share a bunch of different insights and sort of highlight one particular insight on each story point. So these are called story points here, and we can navigate between them. And this is different from dashboards because with dashboards, you can only kind of do a single view of each worksheet. But with story points, you can have different filters set up on your existing worksheets. So I can add yet another story point from monthly. And now I have my filter, and I can actually change the filter for just, I'll say just recent dates. And so the cool thing with this is we can now switch around and look at the same worksheet, but different selections of the same worksheet. So the filters can vary in our story points. So that's one aspect of story points that I want to highlight, is that they're very useful if you want to show different parts of a worksheet. You can set that up with different story points. Of course, you can also add a story point related to some other visual, right? If I want to say, focus in on Texas or something on the map, I could do that as well. So this is a great way to basically say, here are a number of insights I want to highlight for you based on the worksheets that I've created. So I can say, okay, I'm looking at this 1 month, I'm looking at this 1 month, I'm looking at just recent data, and then I'm going to also share this case where Texas has negative profit and put the insight there. So that's the story. The other thing to say is that these story points, the format of them, we can make some adjustments over here and change the navigator style. So I like having these rectangles because you can put your main insight into the rectangle, but you could also do numbers where you just click through. You could do dots, or you could just do arrows. Different options with story points. That's it on dashboards and stories. Closing it out with a quote from Tufte. He says, "Graphical excellence is that which gives to the viewer the greatest number of ideas in the shortest time with the least ink in the smallest space."